In this lecture, we're starting to experiment with variables, creating our first variable and allowing us to modify our movement so it flies straight up into the air. Let's get started. If you're new to programming, then variables will be a new concept. If you already know a bit about programming, then perhaps this is a refresher or giving you the context for how things go in C#. So variables are like boxes. They help us store, manipulate, and refer to information. Here's an example of a variable. The variable is a box, and the box is called hit points. And within that box, we currently have a value of 20. Now, that value can go up when you run over a health pack and can go down when you're hit by an enemy. So that's the concept of a variable. Each variable has a name, in this case, hit points. Each variable contains data. In this case, there's a 20 in there, but that can change. And each variable is of a particular type. So when we're using a whole number, like 20 or 30 or 52, that's called an integer. And we would declare that or write that in our code by starting off with the word int, which is reference for integer. Then we would give our variable its name, hit points, and the convention we use is lowercase for the very first letter, and then uppercase for any other word, the start of any other word we have. So lowercase h and then uppercase p for hit points. And then we declare this, the variable of hit points at the moment is going to equal the value of 20, and then we have a semicolon at the end to say we've finished declaring our variable. Here's some other examples using the type of float, which refers to floating point decimal, or it's got a certain number of decimal places after the dot, and we need to signify this with an F at the end of our value. And then we can have a variable which is of type bool, and bools are either true or false. They're very, very useful because it allows us to say if something is not true, then do this particular thing. Or you can only access this if you currently do have something or don't have something. The convention we use here is usually is something if it's a bool, so is alive or is active or is enemy, etc. And then another type is a string. Strings are so we can just put in letters and numbers and characters in there. Unity doesn't know what those things mean. It doesn't know that I'm a Rick. It's just like, okay, I've got some letters in here, that's cool. And we declare it a similar way. We need to use the quotation marks when we're declaring a string, so it knows between this quotation mark and that quotation mark there's just stuff in there, and that happens to be something that we're interested in, and that is, in this case, is my name of Rick. Let's head back over to Unity and specifically head back into our C# script where we're looking at mover.cs. We're going to replace some of our code in here with a variable. Specifically the 0.01f that we're just typed in here. We've hard-coded, that's the way we would refer to that. We'd rather have this as a variable. So up at the very top above start, we're going to give ourselves a little bit of space. We'll start by typing the type, which is float, and then we're going to give it its name. I'm going to call it x value, because it's a value that's somewhere on the x-axis. And then I need to use the equals sign and then to give it a starting number. And I'll just use the same number we've got down here, 0.01. And we need to add the f to show that it's a float and then semicolon. Now it's pretty straightforward for us to head down where we've got our statement of transform.translate and remove the 0.01f. And instead, we just type in x value. So we're saying whatever number or value is currently within this variable or this box is going to be the thing that is placed in here. So in our instance, 0.01f is the value that is going to be used within here. Let's save, and I'm just going to show you that that works pretty much exactly the same way as what we did before we had a variable. I'm going to click on play, the button up in the top in the middle, and our player is slowly moving across the screen as it was doing before. So you might be saying, why bother? That was a lot of work and things were working just fine as they were. It allows us to have a lot more control and flexibility and to do a lot more things by using variables. It means that we can group all of our variables up the top here. So if we've got many variables, then we can see them easily in one place in our script and not have to go wading through our code to try to find where those things are if there's a lot of content within our script. Another reason is it allows us to make one change and then to manipulate a lot of different areas. So we're currently within update, we're saying transform.translate. Maybe there's another place we're using x value and another place and another place and dozens of places, and we don't want to have to go into every single one of those places and update it because we're going to make a mistake or we're going to miss something, or it's just going to be a big pain to do that. Okay, I think it's a good time to make sure that you've been listening and to give you a challenge. That challenge is to create two more variables. Create a variable for the y value and a variable for the z value. And then once you've done that, I'd like you to change the values so that your player flies straight up in the air. Doesn't go off into the distance, just go straight up into the air. So there's your challenge. Pause the video, take that on. I'll see you back here when you're ready. Right, let me show you my solution to that challenge. I'm going to type 2 more variables. Both of these are going to be float, as we did before, float y value, and I'm going to initialize that at 0 because I haven't figured out what I need to do exactly just yet. And I'm going to create another, which is float z value equals also 0f. While I'm here, I'll change my x value to be 0. So they're all zeros. And then I'll jump over into Unity, have a look and see what we need to do here. Well, you can see on our little widget that y is the axis that's straight up in the air. This green axis is going to go straight up in the air if we change that. So back to my code, I will change the y value from 0 to 0.01. Well, I'll make it 0.05 just to show that it doesn't always have to be 0.01. I will save that. And then we come down into our transform.translate and I will change from 0f to y value and change from the other 0f to z or z value. And remember, every time we're doing x, y, z, it's in that order, x, y, z. You don't want to put in y and then z and then x. It won't work as you expect it. I'm going to save all of that back over into Unity, click on play. That's going to fly up into the distance. Excellent. Mission accomplished. So that's all I wanted to show in this lecture, just the first introduction to variables and to get us on our way to making an excellent project. Okay, I'll see you in the next lecture.